Good evening. This is Don Sinkfield. Welcome to the Help to Adjust podcast. So, when I go through my list of friends, I am blessed with people who are naturals to be guests on this podcast. I try to pick people who are people who have something important to teach or to say, people of service. So today we have a person who is the CEO and founder of Keep It Sweet. All right. I didn't mispronounce sweet. That is
Yes,
Keep It
it's with a Z.
Sweet, right? With a Z. The president of the Gotham chapter, Top Ladies of Distinction,
Yes.
and the founder of an organization that empowers women. What's the name of that one?
That one is You Can Sit With Us.
You Can Sit With Us. I would like you all to meet Jasmine Cross. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
So, you really have you have an illustrious background. Your mom is a career educator, Dr. Cross.
Yes.
Had a wonderful career in New York City. Where did your penchant for service to the community start?
I think I've always had it. So I started as a Girl Scouts, and then it just kind of stayed. So I started as a Girl Scouts, and then my grandmother brought me into the Top Teens, which is the teen side of the Top Ladies.
Right.
And at the time, the slogan was, "We are top in community service." So I always have had a knack for doing more, helping, and kind of just getting in wherever I could fit in, but to help, right? So like we would do a lot of fundraising, a lot of community service growing up, and it just stuck with me, and it just never left. Like somebody always needs a hand or help, and then you can be in a situation where you need the help, right? So, and I've always lived by to whom much is given, much is required.
Absolutely.
Always. So for me, it's, yes, I am blessed, but I'm blessed enough to be a blessing. And I've always just lived by that. So I guess that's where the service part really comes in. And I don't like the word servant, but I think it's a humble title, or it's humbling, right? Because I don't think you can lead without being able to serve. I think that's huge.
I agree. Yeah. So you started off as a top teen. Give me a little bit of that experience. What did you do? What did you learn the most about there?
So as a top teen, okay, so first when I started, you talking like late 90s, early 2000s, I was shy growing up. And the top teens helps you come out of that shell for sure. Because it was like, oh, leadership positions, and why don't you try this and why don't you try that? So I became the recording secretary at one point, and then you get to meet all of these people. So we have seminars and conferences throughout the course of the years. So I would go to all of the seminars, you meet everybody, and then I would go, like I've been to Texas and I met all these people. But it really teaches you connections. And I love that everybody was Black.
Yeah.
Right? Because I went to school in Bayside for high school and junior high school. So I was considered a minority. So the minute I saw Black people, and I mean, they were really doing something, people's parents had really good jobs. Even if they didn't, you were called to a higher standard. And it never left me. And then I was at Howard freshman year. I believe it was Hurricane Katrina. Yep, Hurricane Katrina. And the students from Xavier had to be, they were displaced. So they were then sent to come to Howard. And a young lady named Cammie, who lived right across the hall from me, I had on my top teen shirt. She was like, oh my God, I'm a top teen. And we started going through pictures. Come to find out, her brother and I had been in pictures together. He went to Howard too. So it's just a sense of family. It was always a great organization. My mentor stayed with me all the way until she passed. I had already had my first child by that time. So it wasn't like she was just with me and she left. Like she became family.
That's wonderful. So at Howard, top of the HBCU,
The real HU.
right? It was there when you started Keep It Sweet.
Yes. So I went to college in 2005. That was like the brink of social media. Like MySpace was a thing, but then Facebook came, right? So once Facebook came in, that was back in the day when Facebook, you had to be a college student to get on Facebook at one point, right? People don't even know that. You had to have a college email to get on Facebook. And Howard is always having a banquet. There's always there's always something. And at that time, once you took the picture and you uploaded it, you were never seen in this dress again.
Right.
So I was like, well, you just have these dresses sitting in your closet. And the same thing with Top Teens. There's always a gala. There's always something happening. So I had all of these dresses. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I remember how much money costs. And my parents had really good jobs. I remember how much it costs for prom. And I'm like, what if I could take these dresses and donate them to, like, if it was expensive for my parents and I had, at that time, a 2-parent household, what about the single mothers?
Absolutely.
So I never forget a young lady that I was studying with. She had a mentor who was a millionaire. First million I had ever met that I knew was a millionaire that wasn't like family or something. Yeah. And she was like, well, if you could do anything without the money, like she was like, what would it be? And I was like, help people. And then she's like, help them do what? And she said, if I gave you $100,000 right now, what would it be? What would you do with it? And I was like, I probably would start a service project. So that's how Keep It Sweet was born. And the name Keep It Sweet is, I pay homage to my uncle, who was like my favorite person ever. He passed when I was 16, but he always called his wife his sweets. So that's where Keep It Sweet came from, because that was his sweets. But he just loved her unconditionally. So it was always like, he would buy her cake. They died in their like 80s, but they were just so in love. It was crazy. Yeah. So that was like my paying homage to him.
Black love is one of those things that brings a lot of emotion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially when it's done right. When it's done right, and I don't want to say there's a cliche way of doing it, but you understand it when you're in it. Mm-hmm. And it's just a feeling. It's kind of like when your mom used to cook and you came home and that smell of her cooking. It's just something in you, right? That's what Black love is. And my uncle was just, he was everything. Like, he taught me so much. My dad was there, of course, too. But my uncle, like, held it down. And everybody in my family knew I was his favorite. He didn't hold no bars. So that's where that organization came from. And I've been able to grow it. And one of your old colleagues, I actually was able to facilitate one of the schools she was in, Miss Fia. Mm-hmm. One year, and I helped quite a few, and I love the organization and the tears that come from the parents the day of prom, and it's like that's what this is for.
That's a demonstration of the generational difference between us that you called Fia Davis, now the superintendent of Bronx High Schools. You called her Miss Fia. So, and you still call me Mr. Sinkfield sometimes.
I know. You know what? It's like when you grow up like that, it's so hard to get away from it. It's so hard.
Yeah. It's really wonderful, though, that you found that early in your life, that desire to serve. And to serve is to be served in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you kind of... learn that your ability to help other people matters, and it's just very rewarding. So and it's funny that your Keep It Sweet is a tribute to your uncle's marriage, because another organization that you have is a tribute to your mom's contribution to your life.
Yes.
And that is...
So you can sit with us. So if anybody knows my mother is like the living version of Claire Huxtable. Like, I don't know how to describe her any better. But my mother is a force to be reckoned with as a Black woman. Dr. Cross now, is she's just phenomenal. Like, my mom is in so many different rooms and her name speaks volume. And I've always looked up to my mom. I've watched my mom work 2 jobs, be a single mother at one point, go to college, get her master's. Like, I was there when she got her master's, right? And she did all of this without complaining. I never saw my mother complain. So it was kind of like, And then even growing up with her being in the educational field, you kind of feel like you're robbed a little bit, right? Because my mom couldn't make it to my parent-teacher conferences because they were the same day as her parent-teacher conferences. Oh, yeah. My mother couldn't make certain events because the same thing was happening at her school. And then I used to be like, these kids all get to experience my mother, right? But then as I got older and I realized she was paving the way for these kids to go to college, better themselves, become amazing, it changed my whole trajectory of her. And then when I got to college, I took a course called Black Women in America, Life-Changing. Life-changing. I realized in that moment, my mother's not Superwoman and she's human. She has bad days. She has good days. She has her own struggles. So as I started to get older, every table my mother sits at, whether it's an organization, whether it's anything, my mother tries to bring me to the table once she solidifies her seat. And that's how legacy is born, right? And that's one thing that we have to get better with in our community is legacy. And I have to pave the way for my children. My children are not supposed to have it as hard as I do, right? We have this struggle mentality. Like, I had to do it. No, your child is never supposed to struggle the way that you did. That's why you did some of the things that you've done. So my mother is great at that. And I started going to women's events. And my mother and I went to an event. It was a great event, but everybody just got up and gave their success story. And when I left, I felt like, okay, but what about me? Right? What's my next step? And the networking was great. But again, what about me? So You Can Sit With Us started because my mother allows me to sit at these amazing tables. Like, my mother's a top lady as well. So because of that, and she always kept me in the loop to come back as a lady. So because of that, I started You Can Sit With Us. And it literally is a very interactive women's empowerment event. And this is not your cliche, we're going to get up and talk about the success. No, we're going to cry. We're going to hug. We're going to speak life. We're going to talk about some ugly truths within our community, so revolving us as a people. And the biggest thing is we reconstruct the code of sisterhood and what that looks like in today's world. So I love it. Women come face painted, lashes on, wigs slayed, face slayed. And by the time they leave, and lashes are falling off, you done cried your makeup off. But it's a good cry, and you can start the healing process. I remember one event that I did. My best friend Katoya. So Katoya has been my friend since we were 3 years old. Katoya and I have been friends for over 30 years.
Since you were 3?
Since we were 3.
I thought that you met her at good old Family Academy in Brooklyn.
Nope, I met Katoya at Bethlehem Baptist Academy right across the street from Family Academy.
I see.
So we've been friends. So she came, she brought one of her good friends. I had some friends from high school come to the event. And one person pulled me to the side and said, this is like a form of ministry. And I said, yes, but I don't want it to be in the church. Mm-hmm. I don't want that cliche. I want you to be able to speak your ugly truth here. I want you to be able, if you got to cuss, I need you to do that, because I need you to get you have to release some of the trauma, right? We can't keep revolting back to the 17-year-old hurt little girl. Let's work through that. Why are we there? Why is it every time somebody doesn't agree with you, 17-year-old Jasmine shows up and she rolling her neck and you ain't about to talk to me like that? Why? Why are you still stuck there? So we get down to the nitty gritty. I love it though. I love it.
Yeah. It's so in a sense it's Black women giving each other some therapeutic tools.
Absolutely. And grace. We don't give each other enough grace.
Yeah.
Right? I got to give you the grace to make some mistakes. I got to give you the grace to say you messed up. I have to give you the grace to say you're manipulative. I got to give you the grace to say I could have done better. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to correct it, correct it. right? And I try to stay as best as I can connected to everybody that comes through those events. I'm getting ready to start them back up because prior to COVID, I was really like hitting the ground running. So I'll be starting those back up starting next year. But yeah, and then I don't have any sisters. I don't have any biological sisters. So the bonds of sisterhood are very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
Very. Like, if I consider you one of my people, you one of my people. Like, you know, so.
So entrepreneurship is one of the things you touch on with the ladies?
Yeah, so every session is different. So sometimes we might talk about entrepreneurship. Sometimes we might just talk about sisterhood. Sometimes talk about a little bit of everything. But yes, I have talked about entrepreneurship as well. And how, although it's important, it's not for everybody.
Right.
And I need people to understand, listen to me clearly.
This is a good segue. I want you to talk more about this.
This is not for everybody, okay? Being an entrepreneur is a lot of work. And there are highs, there are lows, there are days where you're just coasting. There are days where you don't know what you're doing. There are days you're trying to figure it out. There are days of doubt. I try not to make it days, I'd rather moments, because I don't want to consume my whole day with something like that. But it's a lot. It's a lot. And there aren't enough networks, not real networks, for entrepreneurs to tap in when you are burnt out, when you don't have it, when the money ain't money in, right? Right? The checks ain't.
I like that. Making money into a verb. The money ain't money in all the time.
It ain't, right? Like, listen, last week's money ain't meet this week's money. So, and it happens. It happens, but that's the ugly truth nobody talks about, especially now with social media, which is such a gift and a curse, that everybody's successful. And not just successful, but wildly successful. Like, everybody's catching flights and not feelings. Everybody's cashing out. Everybody got a Lambo truck. Everybody is not living like that at all. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And the higher you get, you start to realize, like, oh, this ain't what I thought. Like, or this person isn't what I thought. So, yeah, we definitely talk about all of it. Like I said, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. So give me a little bit about your journey in entrepreneurship. I mean, how long ago would you say you really delved into it?
So I took my first shot at entrepreneurship in 2015. And so I knew in college I didn't want to work a regular 9 to 5. I just like knew. And then, like, anybody knows my story, you know, I dated hustlers back in the day. So it was like, well, he ain't getting up and going to work and he making a lot of money, right? And the money's quick. I like nice things. So I'm like, and of course, then reality came, because my parents are like, my father is a retired cop. My mother's a retired assistant principal. There was no street life here. So when I got back home from school, of course, I worked a job. You know, I worked in a day hab facility for psychiatric patients. And I never forget, I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I had the cases within the state that nobody wanted. Very, very high risk cases. So, like, my first day on the job, I had a table thrown at me. Right? And I came back. Like, I'm back the next day. Your
first day.
My first day. And then, like, everybody just stopped that worked there and was like, it was like pins and needles, like, we don't think she's coming back. Right. But I came back, and it's funny, one of my old clients, his father is actually my barber. That's a whole nother story. But I had a client who, because some of them, they were pretty high functioning for the most part. So I had one client who I was like, I got pregnant with my second daughter. I started showing, and I was like, I don't want to be left with him alone, because he could attack me, and there's no protocol that he was. At that time, I think he was almost 300 pounds, 6'3". Like, there was nothing I could do. And that's exactly what happened. He attacked me. So I went out, ambulance came, went out. I was out on medical leave. And while I was out on medical leave, I got terminated. And they said I just went AWOL. Even though I had plenty of documentation that I was speaking with HR, I let them know I was in the doctor's office. So now here I am, second child. I go from 2 incomes. Their dad and I go from 2 incomes to 1. I just bought a new car. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I believe in God, and, people can believe in whatever they choose to, but that's what I choose. And I do believe that when you put good out, good comes back. So it just so happened my brother's ex-girlfriend was a sonogram technician because I lost my health coverage. So now here I am, 5.5, almost 6 months pregnant. I got attacked the day after Anthony's wedding, Anthony Richards, the day after. And so it was in July. And I go out. My brother's ex-girlfriend is a sonogram technician. So because I couldn't get any doctor's appointments, I didn't have any health coverage. And for whatever the reason, I couldn't get like emergency coverage. Then the government shut down. It was just like one thing after another after another. Yeah. So my brother's ex-girlfriend would come and she would check me and make sure the baby was growing properly and everything. Long story short, she was born healthy. I did have some complications because I was so stressed out. My body was absorbing the liquid around the baby, which I didn't even know was possible. So I'm in the hospital every other day. She comes a little early, but she's healthy. Thank God. She's fine. And my dad was like, you should sue. And I was like, So I got a lawyer, didn't like how he was moving, fired him, represented myself, won the case. They had to retro pay me from the time I was terminated.
You represented yourself?
Yeah, represented myself. Because I didn't like the way the lawyer was moving. It was a white guy. So I represented myself. I had all my paperwork, everything. So by the time we got finished, the judge was like, you all are going to retro pay her from the time you terminated her up until her due date. And then he had them pay me my salary up until I found another job. So I was able to stay home. I was okay with that. But in that moment, being let go like that and the rug was slipped from under me to the point I ain't got no money. I don't got no health coverage. I got a kid, another one on the way. I said I never want to be in this situation ever again. Ever again. So although I did go back into corporate America after that, I still didn't like the way I was treated. You can give it your all and it's just not appreciated. You can stay late. You can come in early. You can do all these things and it's not appreciated. So that just fueled, like that put the battery in my back. Like, you better have your own and figure it out quick. So that's really where the first step of being an entrepreneur came. And I kind of just took it and ran with it. And I didn't know what I was doing. The first business I started, I didn't even file it properly.
What was the business?
It was it's an online store. And I still have it to this day. It does really, really well. I've had $8,000 days. I've had $800 days. I've had days I ain't make $8, right? Mm-hmm. But I stuck with that and it really flourished. Last year, I had a complete stranger post a video. I was like, oh, I sell one of the products in the video. And he was like, oh, maybe 2 hours later, he inboxed me and was like, tag your business. We have 2,000 views already. And he was like, I think this is going to take off. And I was like, okay, sent him my business. By the midday, we were at like 20,000 views. Mm-hmm. So then we wound, I think by now it's probably like 2 mil. But from that one video, I made $30,000 in 2.5 months. That's amazing. Off of one video, right?
The power of social media.
The power of social media. And a complete stranger.
Right.
A complete stranger.
Random act of kindness?
Sure. And like, I didn't even know people were going to the website until somebody inboxed me. And then I went and I opened up the website because I wasn't doing business in the store like that anymore. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, when I tell you I was waking up to $1,000, like making money in my sleep, literally. Yeah. And I showed my mother the type of, she was like, you're joking. And I was like, no, look, she couldn't believe it. But that's just like your business literally can take off at any moment. You have to be so ready for that, especially, everybody wants to be booked and busy and all that. That's great. But do you have what it takes to sustain being booked and busy?
What if that were to happen?
What would happen
week
if you
after week, month after month?
Right. If you really took off, do you have the customer service skills to answer all of these emails and keep the tracking and keep things going? Do you have enough inventory? Or you just taking orders and you don't have it, and now people are mad because you're not Amazon Prime and can't get stuff to people in 2 days, right? So we always want things without understanding what it takes to sustain it. and you gotta have what it takes to sustain the business. Like, and I'm big on seeing the end before you get there. Always see that, but understand what it's going to take you to get there. Yeah, you want $1 million,
you have to do every day.
But what does that mean to get to that $1 million? Or I always laugh, like when I started coaching people in business, that it was like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, but can you make $100 consistently? No. So we got to get you there first. I need you to make repetitively make $100 before I can get you to the mill. And then if your only goal is the mill, what happens after that? Can you make another one?
Right.
Because now we've pushed the line on the field further. So, and we got to keep going. So it's very interesting in the mental games that happen to you as an entrepreneur, because going from an $8,000 day to an $800 day, it'll play on your psychological for real.
Right. So, in mental health, we had exactly that scenario that we had during COVID. Our business grew by maybe tripled the amount of people that were calling, and that's really what we dealt with, going from serving people almost immediately to wait lists. And, we brought the staff on little by little to deal with that. But it's very real, because when you have a lot to do, you have to sustain it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and I know I called. I called a couple months ago, like, okay, I have to set my appointments back up. And she was like, it's a 2-month wait list. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. But number one, it was a blessing. I wasn't upset because I wasn't in dire need. But it was just like, look at how it's grown. And that's just the reality of it, is when you're sold out, you don't make any more money sometimes because you sold everything. Like, people have to be so conscious of what we ask for to manifest in our lives. Because listen, being booked and busy is a blessing, but you're going to miss dinner with friends. You're going to miss some family events. Like, you can't go to everything. And that's the other part of being an entrepreneur. You have to know when to say no. And I don't mean just money wise. You have to say no to things. Like, I stayed home for a whole year. And my friends they just respected it. Like, I wasn't going to dinner. I wasn't going anything extra. I can't do, because that money I can funnel back into the business. So, and they understood. But it's you have to have some real willpower with yourself to say, yeah, I got to sit this one out.
Right. Lifestyle change. And, I like the fact that you mentioned putting money back into the business.
Oh, yeah.
I love that's maybe my favorite piece of advisement to give, that if you make $12,000, pay you and your staff $6,000 if possible, and put the other $6,000 back
absolutely
in. Yeah.
And that's real game, because most people think you just, like I say, you just out here catching flights. And listen, it's not like that at all. Now, do I love traveling? I do. But you have to be willing to put some money back to sustain yourself. Because again, are you just going to be a trend? Are you talking longevity? Like, what are we looking at here? And there's so many aspects to business. There's lawyers, there's accountants, you have licensing. Like, there's so many pieces to the puzzle, and so many moving parts that and it's okay not to know everything. It's perfectly fine. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I don't have it all together. There are days when I've spent 6 hours just researching something, right? Because that's a part of this. And I hate when people are like, I don't want to work for anybody else. Then you don't want to be an entrepreneur. Because if you complain about putting in 8 hours, because in the beginning, everybody puts in crazy time. Yeah. Even look at social media. Like, you even have to research that. You have to research what time to post things. You have to research algorithms and all this other craziness. And sometimes it takes hours if that's not your lane. So, Yeah, if time is your thing, now I understand wanting to spend your time how you want to spend your time. I'm cool with that. But in the beginning, you spent
Yeah.
a lot of time doing things that you may not want to do, especially if it's just you. If you ain't got a team, forget it. Forget it.
This room that we are in right now was my office. And I saw clients in this office some days from 9 or 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then still had to return phone calls to clients, was involved very closely with billing and all of these things that we now have experts in, but we didn't always have that. And it's very important what you're saying. You recently told me a tough story, and it's about, in my mind, it's about managing people. Although this wasn't someone who was your employee, it was someone who was using your services and then decided she didn't want to and took it to a legal level. Talk about that a little bit, because I think it's an instructive story.
Okay, so I was sued. My business was sued, not me personally. So that is when you hear people talk about the difference between LLCs and S corps and C corps and things like that. So an LLC is a limited liability corporation. Okay, so what happens when you have an LLC is the business gets sued, not you.
Right.
So none of your assets can get touched. Okay, so I started a CBD company, and I was up on a hemp farm, and I'm up on the farm, and I literally went from dating the hustlers to figuring out how to become one legally, and I loved it. The money was great. So then I was like, well, how can I get other melanin filled people in this field? Because when I showed up, the only people of color were me and the black farmer that brought me on. Nobody else. And then when I show up, I'm never my own boss. I'm always his wife. I'm always his girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And then he would shut that down like, she's not that. Like, she's her own person. So I was like, and I saw the direction that it was going, because I got introduced to it during the pandemic. I saw the direction it was going, and I was like, oh, we have to get into this now. And I said, I'm tired of my people being given the opportunity when the scraps are being served. Like, I want to be there for the appetizer, the entree. I want to get to the bag like everybody else. So I started this program to help people get in. And you could start your own CBD line. And we had everything. We sell everything from bath bombs to gummies to vitamins, you name it, muscle cream, all kind of things. So this young lady bought into the company. She bought in to become an affiliate so she could start her own product line. And she wanted to buy in before the program even launched. And that was in October. And she sent me an email in December saying that she wanted a refund and wanted her money back, and she didn't want to be in the program anymore. But she had already had access to all my documents, my licensing, and everything. So I was telling her, like, 2 months out, I can't give you a refund, and we don't give refunds. It was on the website, it was on the social, it was on everything. She went through the proceedings because she paid through PayPal. So she went through PayPal. I won every case. And I mean, it was like case after case, to the point I called PayPal like, okay, how many cases can this person put in? Wow. Yeah. I won all of the cases, and then she decided to take it to civil court, not small claims court, civil court, because my business is registered in Nassau. I guess she didn't want to come to Nassau, or maybe she doesn't drive. So she filed in Queens. So if you don't file in the county in which the business was established, it's considered civil court. Okay. Instead of small claims. So she sued the business. I go down to answer it. The clerk is like, you need a lawyer. Then the supervisor told me I didn't need a lawyer because they were going to handle it as small claims. She was suing me for $500. So I said, okay. We get to court this July. And the judge is like, so where's your legal representation? I was like, I don't have legal representation today. And she was like, well, you can't represent yourself because she sued your business. So anytime, listen to me, anytime that someone sues your corporation, you cannot represent yourself. You have to have licensed legal representation. So my lawyer was more money than the $500.
Right.
So it wouldn't have made sense.
Correct.
So now I get on the phone with my lawyer and I'm like, what should I do? So I was like, I'm going to proceed because the judge asked us if I want to proceed. She allowed us to go out in the hallway and negotiate. The girl didn't want what I was going to offer her. So now the part they don't tell you, and this is the ugly part of business. So when you get sued, if you don't have legal representation, it is a one-sided case. You can't really say anything. You can ask to see the evidence if any evidence is presented. And then the judge will ask you, do you have anything to add? But they're really not going to take what you're saying on record. So it really doesn't matter. So I knew either way I was going to come out of my pocket because I could have adjourned it and had my lawyer come. But again, it just $1,500 versus $500. It just didn't make sense. And then I could have countersued for my legal fees. But if you want $500 back, I know you don't have my lawyer fees. So it didn't make sense. So I wound up, the judge settled on me paying her $300. So now we go down to the clerk because I was like, well, I've never been through this. How do I pay her? And the judge was like, I don't have nothing to do with that. Go to the clerk. Right?
Wow.
It was a system.
Yeah.
So now we go down to the clerk and the clerk tells her like, you ain't gonna get your money no time soon. We're backed up. And then the clerk looked at me and said, you don't have to figure out how you're going to pay her. She has to figure out how you're going to pay her, which I've never been through this. So I was like, this is weird. And I've sued people, but it's always been in small claims. And small claims, you have to decide right then and there. You're given a date on when this person is to pay you. And then once that date, if they exceed past that date, then you add interest. So long story short, I literally got a letter in the mail. No, she started like sending me emails. I felt like I was being harassed. And I was like, I have no problem paying you, but I don't have any paperwork from the court saying that I owe this money to you. I'm waiting for legal documentation.
Absolutely.
Because I said, I'm not just going to pay you. Oh, and she never mentioned PayPal when we went to court. Never. She never mentioned that she put in these claims and I won them. So she wound up getting a lawyer. Now, here's the other side. Pay attention. Here's the other side. When you decide to sue a business, if you all do not decide to just pay the money outright to the other person and you want to go through the courts, you now have to get a collections attorney. The collections attorney takes a portion of your winnings. Right. Because it's still an attorney, and it can go anywhere from 10% to the 33%. So she had to go and get the attorney. They contacted me. I let them know, like, let's do a payment arrangement, a monthly arrangement. She didn't want what I was offering at the time. She wanted way more money a month. And I was like, listen, she can either take it or she can't. Now, here's the other side of it. When you sue somebody in business, we always think when somebody sues you, whatever the judge says is just what you're going to get. Absolutely not. As a business, if you dissolve your business, the person gets nothing. They get absolutely nothing. And could I have done that? I could have. I'm going to pay the girl, no problem. But even I just got a letter this week that the lawyer was like, okay, she agreed to the payment arrangement. So I don't mind setting it up. But it's a headache. It mentally took me to another place. Yeah. I was ready to just close everything down. I had to really talk myself out of some stuff. I had some other people that I knew that were in business that talked me up out of it because mentally I was like, how do we get here? Like, how do we get all the way to court? And all I was trying to do was help, right? Yeah. I'm just trying to put people on. Right. Like, and then she took the package that was given to her. Now, my packages come from a personal delivery person that I use. I don't use UPS. I don't use, especially if you're local, I don't use that. So, right. And I was like, but why did you take the kit if you didn't want to be a part of the program? And she was like, oh, well, it was around Christmas time. So, but it was like the beginning of December. So I was like, huh? Like, it was just crazy. I learned a lot of lessons with that. I learned that, I don't want to say I lowballed my company, but it was affordable. And sometimes when things are affordable, you get all kinds of people. So you have to be very careful with what you
price
do
point.
and price points, right? Vetting people when it comes to providing services is big. Chargebacks are a real thing. And they work negatively against your business, whether it's PayPal, Square, anything like that. You have to be very careful. But it's interesting. It's very like, this is not for the faint of heart at all. If you, and you're gonna have down days, but your lower self, your higher self has to be able to talk to your lower self. Cause I left that courtroom, when I say defeated. I was like, and I had all my papers. I got emails, I got all this. And when the lawyer was like, yeah, you can't really say anything, I was like,
Yeah, it really can have a psychological effect on you, especially if you're kind of pure in your intentions, and you just want to get what you need done accomplished, and then you find yourself in court, or not able to file this, not able to do that, needing legal representation for a case worth less than half of $1,000.
it was so bad that, because now when you go to court, everybody can hear your case, right? Even the people virtually, you can hear everybody's case. And I'm sitting in there and I'm like, this person's suing Geico for $36,000. I'm like, huh? Like, where am I at? Like,
Right.
to the point, there was a lawyer that walked over to me. He was like, settle this. He's like, it is not
Makes no
worth it.
sense. Yeah.
And she just didn't want to. And I get it. People want to sue. It is what it is. But like you said, my intention was pure. So, and it took me back. I still haven't reopened my program. I will. I just have to rethink some things and pivot some things to make sure that I'm going to take every precaution so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Moving forward. But the program won't be $500 anymore for sure.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's a lot to all of it, including what you charge, including the vetting that you mentioned. We learned a lot of lessons in that regard also.
Oh, yeah. And like, don't think if you have a small business that learning lessons is a bad thing. We've even seen major brands have hiccups.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, look at how many times Uggs has had a glitch and people were getting Uggs for like $50, right? And they had to go back and refund everybody their money. Like, companies just have that. It happens.
And insurance companies and other large entities also have money problems sometimes. Where
yes.
They try to hold off on payments, or somebody else takes over their banking because there was a problem. Sometimes we think that that's only very small entities, but
no, yeah, even the large ones for sure. Like, and I tell people that all the time. Everything is a learning process, and like, the world's constantly changing, so businesses have to change with it, including small or big. There are so many companies that take a hit. We always want to compare our businesses. Like, I'm gonna be like Gucci, and I'm gonna be like Louis, and I'm gonna go and work in Gucci and Louis, and you tell me how much money they lose a day. Mm-hmm. A day. You're talking thousands a day. And whether it's stolen, whether it's damaged goods, whether it doesn't matter what it is. Look at how much money these companies lose to the fraudulent dealers and manufacturers, right? Right. But that's what you want to be like. You have to be very careful what you even put in the atmosphere, because I couldn't even imagine what some of those companies are going through now, to where it's like, dang, like, or look at, what was the other one? Like Nike. Nike, they're not suffering, but that was a big thing. What was that? Just a couple weeks ago, like, everybody was looking at boycotting Nike. So, you just never know. There's always something going on in business, and you got to stay abreast to every single thing. And then, like I said, your mental, you have to learn to take breaks. You have to learn how to have self-love, self-care. All of that is important in business. Keep a schedule. I'm big on keeping a schedule until like a new project comes and something changes. But especially with me, I've juggled so many hats. So like if Tuesday's set for this, that's Tuesday. If Wednesday's for this. And my affiliates had to learn that, because at one point I was at like their beck and call, to where now you might email me on a Monday, you might not get a response till Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And that's okay. I had to learn that I'm not Amazon Prime. I can't, my turnaround time is not like theirs. I'm not as quick with it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as your customer service and your communication works. And that's the other thing. When it comes to being an entrepreneur and your mental, do not go through your emails when you're in a bad mood.
Because those responses,
you will be like, what was I? No, I shouldn't have said it like that. No, put on the auto response and let that help you navigate your way. But you can open it, and like I said, if you're not, I'm not a morning person. I don't think I ever will be. So I try not to answer my emails in the morning, midday, afternoon, evening. Come back to it, right? Or I've even opened the email like, wait, what? But it might be my mood, right? My mood might have been off, and I read it, because if I say good morning, Don, and you having a bad day, in your mind it was good morning, So you got to be quick on that too, like. Know when to say, all right, give me 5 minutes. Let me come back. Because you never want to make anybody feel crazy because you're having a moment.
That's self-awareness.
You got to have it in business. You got to be able to correct yourself, and quickly.
Right.
Quickly. You got to be able to tell a customer or a client, like, you know what? I was wrong. I'm sorry. Because sometimes that's all a client wants is a sorry, or I could have handled that better. How can I accommodate you? And we got to get better with that as a culture.
You're talking therapeutic principles right now. Sometimes people just need to be listened to.
Yeah.
And, truly, sometimes you don't even have to say you were wrong. You just have to hear them and say, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I'm developing a course now for customer service for Black business owners. And it'll be free for a limited time, because that's how bad it is that we have to get it. We have to understand it. And like I said, when I used to coach people in business, and it was always Gucci and Louis and this, and I'm like, but have you ever shopped there? No, I never been in there. So you don't even know what the experience is like, because you're paying for it's a good and the product is good, but you're paying for the experience. You have a personal shopper. You're offered all kind of things when you go in there. Like, it's an experience. So if you're not providing that for your customers, you can't compare yourself. And we're not big on customer service, right? We have like this ego. We have this chip on our shoulder that this person has to spend their money with you, and they don't. You don't know what this person did to get that, whatever the price point is. Some people hate the job they go to, and they still want to support you. And I don't care if Beyonce came through the door versus Bianca. They should be treated the same. They should be treated the same. Everybody gets that special treatment. And like you said, it's something so small to how was your day? Or sending a thank you card, or saying, I appreciate your business.
Yeah.
It's something so simple, so we've got to get better with that as well. And the same way you want to be treated in business, treat your customers that way.
Absolutely.
You ain't got to duck your customer. If I'm emailing you, at least respond, say something, right? Even if you put on a away message and say, we'll be back tomorrow, at least I know I should be hearing something tomorrow.
Correct.
I had an issue with a business owner to where it was time sensitive and he couldn't deliver, and he didn't want to give me back my money. It got a little ugly for a second. His mother got involved, and she sided with me and was like, but you didn't deliver, like, give her back the money. And I said to him, all you have to do was keep the lines of communication open. But now you ducking my calls, and and then I heard he did that to somebody else that I know over the weekend. They were telling me their story, but we've got to get better with that. We got to get better with just being transparent. Sometimes you can say, listen, I remember even with my toy store, I've had people, my online store, I've had people contact me like, oh, I ordered something 2 weeks ago, and I'll go look at the invoice and it was literally 3 days ago. Right. And then so instead of being like, now, right? Because that could be my response. I'll say something like, I did see your invoice. I pulled your invoice up. We are working on processing your order, and a tracking number will go out to you as soon as possible. And usually that calms them down versus me going like, now you
didn't call him a liar.
Right. Like, now we check the records because all of that's not needed. It's still a customer. They still support it. Right. And that's the other part in business. If you don't like people, you can't get into a business where you got to work with people. You can't. There's so many of us like, I don't like their attitude. Okay, but you still took their money. Right? Right. So you're going to have to accommodate that attitude.
Yeah, and your customers are the lifeblood of your business. So if
Absolutely.
you don't like them, either you better have a team that likes them or,
yes.
you know.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's the other big thing. Major companies, that's why they hire customer service people. Usually the CEO don't want to hear about your problems. They don't want to talk to you. This is why they have customer service. A whole department to handle the disgruntled people, to handle the questions nobody wants to answer, to handle the questions that probably could be answered on the website, right? You have a whole team for that because the CEO doesn't want to deal with it. And until you get to that point, that's who you are. You are the front line. But it can be exhausting. I'm not a big sorry person. I'm not big on just telling a customer sorry unless it really is my fault. Right? Because I think that's mentally draining to constantly say sorry for something you didn't do. Like, I had to get out of healthcare because of that. But be mindful of your words, your tone, but understand that people can take your email and flip it, and you didn't mean that the way that it was that they took it. You know, people think that it's a tone through the email. It's like, I really was just sending it, and sometimes it warrants a phone call. Like, let me call you.
Right.
You know, so be willing to do every and anything. If you're a real entrepreneur and it's not a hobby, things will even, I don't want to say haunt you at night, but they keep you up, right? Things that are not resolved, things that you are thinking about, forward movement, forward thinking. You'll jump up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, wait, I thought about this. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But you have to have your mental ready for it too. You have to understand that there are highs, there are lows. There are going to be days where you don't want to get out the bed, but you have to because that's how the bills get paid. It's just you. It's just you. So definitely make sure. And whatever it is that you do to tap out, like I always tell people, especially people that I would coach, every milestone is a milestone. I don't care if you buy yourself a piece of candy. Do something to celebrate it. Like if it's a piece of cake, if whatever it is, if it's a glass of wine, whatever it is to celebrate you, celebrate every small achievement because it builds the brand. Because sometimes we get like, oh, I did this and I did that. So why you didn't celebrate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And mentally it kind of helps you to keep a perspective on what you have done and from whence you've come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you document everything. You document everything in business, like everything. And for the people who are like me, who you don't want to keep paper necessarily, create not just a business email, keep a whole separate email for business receipts, everything. So that because being organized is important in business too. God forbid you get audited. You better be able to back everything up that you have. Because Uncle Sam don't play that. At all.
We know.
So, but like I said, to whom much is given, much is required. It's a blessing. It's a blessing. I never thought I would be this person. I never thought past 16. I didn't know. I didn't know what I would be doing, or I had no clue. But it's a blessing. My kids love it. You know, of course I'm always busy, but it's like, oh wow, you know, my mom does this, or oh, you have another event. No. I wish. No, they just like spending the money. Like I was so humble. I never forget I was wrapping gifts last year, and I just like bursted out into tears. Wrapping Christmas gifts because I was able to supply my half because their dad is phenomenal, but I was able to supply my half with just money from my business.
Yeah.
And it's a blessing, right? And then I even took them and their homegirls. I have 2 daughters. I took them and their homegirls out. We went to Palisades Mall, and they have everything there, roller skate and all kind of stuff. And we spent the day. And I mean, my oldest daughter, her friend looked at me and was like, "Oh, Ma, you dropped the bag on us today, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was so appreciative. And she was like, you okay with that? And I was like, well, I made the money back while we were out. And then I showed her my orders that had come in. And she was like, oh my, like she was in shock. But it was a blessing. It was such a blessing. And I'm not going to lie and act as if business hasn't slowed down a little bit, because it has. It has. We're on the brink of a recession. People, as quiet as it's kept, people are trying to keep their money in their pockets. People understand that in a recession, money talks. So people are trying to keep their money to themselves as much as they can. But it's been a blessing. And having a good support team. My family is amazing. Amazing. Like, my dad will hit me up like, you good? You need anything?
Yeah.
Same thing with my mom. There's always somebody there to help with the kids, because that's the other thing. Your children can feel like they're being left out, to the point where, nope, I got to go to this. My oldest daughter's in everything under the sun athletically. My youngest child, just a personality of her own. You know, you still have to have attention as mom, and you still have to do all kinds of other things and juggle. And it can weigh on you mentally.
Yeah, I'm thankful for having a business partner in the New Hope Mental Health Counseling, because having children, you know, that's a business for which you have to put time into.
Yes.
And there's no way around it.
And you all work well together.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is it's good. It's great to see that it. And even if you all butt heads, it doesn't, like, it seems like you all are very genuine.
We definitely do work well together. Shout out to Clinton Clovis. Jasmine, you are a wealth of information, and you know, the jewels that you gave us today are much appreciated.
My name is Jasmine Cross. I am a serial entrepreneur. You can catch me. I am the president of the Top Ladies of Distinction Gotham chapter. You can find out more about that organization at TLOD Gotham, GOTHAM 92.com.
Like, subscribe, you know, hit those notification buttons so you can stay tuned into what we're doing. Peace and love. We will connect.